Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind one of television's most controversial animated series? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes shocking world of Family Guy, with facts so fascinating they might just help you drift off to sleep. But trust me, you'll want to stay awake for these incredible revelations about Seth MacFarlane's groundbreaking creation. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his tiny apartment, sketching out what would become one of the most polarizing shows in television history. Little did he know that his crude drawings of a dysfunctional Rhode Island family would spawn over 2 decades of entertainment, controversy, and cultural impact that continues to this day. Family Guy didn't just stumble into existence by accident. The show's origin story is actually rooted in MacFarlane's college thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. Back in 1995, he created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a middle-aged man named Larry and his talking dog. This 9-minute animated short caught the attention of television executives and eventually evolved into the Family Guy we know today. What's remarkable is that many of the core elements from that original student film made it directly into the series, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. The casting process for Family Guy reveals some truly surprising facts that most fans never discover. Seth MacFarlane himself voices not just one, but 4 major characters in the show. He's the voice behind Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. What's even more impressive is that MacFarlane can seamlessly switch between these vastly different vocal personalities during recording sessions, often having entire conversations with himself as different characters. The other voice actors frequently joke that they feel like they're working with a one-man show, since MacFarlane essentially carries the comedic weight of multiple personalities. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, actually wasn't the original choice for the character. The role was initially offered to Lacey Chabert, who you might recognize from Mean Girls and Party of 5. Chabert did voice Meg Griffin in the early seasons, but scheduling conflicts led to her departure, and Mila Kunis stepped in to take over. Meanwhile, Borstein had been working as a writer and consultant on the show before landing the role of Lois, making her transition to voice acting feel completely natural. The show's animation style might look simple, but there's incredible complexity hidden beneath those seemingly basic character designs. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial script to final broadcast. The animation process involves hundreds of artists, animators, and technicians working across multiple studios. What's particularly fascinating is that the show uses a hybrid approach, combining traditional hand-drawn animation with computer-generated elements. Those elaborate fight scenes and musical numbers that fans love so much often require specialized animation techniques that push the boundaries of television production budgets. Speaking of production, Family Guy has one of the most unusual writing rooms in television. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers are encouraged to pitch their wildest, most outrageous ideas without any filters. Many of the show's most memorable cutaway gags actually come from spontaneous brainstorming sessions where writers try to one-up each other with increasingly absurd scenarios. The famous "Bird is the Word" episode, for example, originated from a writer casually mentioning the old Trashmen song, which then spiraled into an entire episode concept within hours. The show's relationship with censorship and network standards has created some legendary behind-the-scenes stories. During its early years on Fox, Family Guy constantly pushed against network restrictions, leading to numerous battles over content. Some episodes were heavily edited or had entire segments removed before airing. Interestingly, when the show moved to Adult Swim and later back to Fox with renewed popularity, many of these previously censored segments were restored in DVD releases and streaming versions, giving fans access to the creator's original, uncensored vision. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like something out of a Hollywood fairy tale. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show in 2002 due to declining ratings. However, something unprecedented happened. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created a massive surge in popularity. Fans organized campaigns, online petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and merchandise sales skyrocketed. This grassroots movement convinced Fox to revive the series in 2005, making Family Guy one of the first shows in television history to be brought back to life primarily due to fan demand and home video success. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet culture in ways that most people don't realize. Many popular memes and viral video formats can trace their origins back to Family Guy episodes. The show's cutaway gag structure has become a template for online content creators, and phrases like "freakin' sweet" and "giggity giggity" have entered everyday vocabulary. Social media platforms are filled with Family Guy reaction GIFs and quotes, demonstrating the show's lasting influence on digital communication. Seth MacFarlane's musical background plays a crucial role in Family Guy's identity that often goes unnoticed. MacFarlane is an accomplished jazz singer and pianist who has released several albums and performed with major orchestras. This musical talent directly influences the show's frequent musical numbers and elaborate song and dance sequences. When characters break into song, MacFarlane often personally composes the music and provides vocal arrangements. Some of the show's most memorable moments, like Stewie and Brian's road trip songs or Peter's various musical adventures, showcase MacFarlane's genuine musical abilities rather than just comedy writing. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some truly unique techniques that create the show's distinctive sound. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, Family Guy often brings the core cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvised moments between characters. Seth Green, who voices Chris Griffin, frequently ad-libs during these sessions, leading to some of the characters' most endearing moments. The chemistry between voice actors during these collaborative recording sessions contributes significantly to the family dynamic that makes the show feel authentic despite its outrageous scenarios. Family Guy's international variations reveal fascinating cultural adaptations that most American viewers never see. Different countries have created their own localized versions of certain episodes, replacing American pop culture references with local celebrities and cultural touchstones. The show airs in over 50 countries, and each region has unique censorship requirements that lead to different editing approaches. Some countries focus heavily on removing violence while allowing sexual content, while others take the opposite approach. These international versions sometimes create entirely different comedic rhythms and viewing experiences. The show's relationship with guest stars has produced some incredible behind-the-scenes stories. Many celebrities who appear on Family Guy are longtime fans who specifically request to be part of episodes. Conway Twitty, whose music videos frequently interrupt episodes as random cutaway gags, became a running joke specifically because MacFarlane and the writers found his earnest country music performances hilariously incongruous with the show's irreverent tone. Some guest stars have recorded multiple episodes worth of material during single recording sessions, allowing the show to feature their characters across multiple seasons. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has created a unique position in television comedy. The show operates under what writers call the equal opportunity offense philosophy, meaning that no topic, group, or individual is considered off-limits for comedic treatment. This approach has generated both criticism and praise from various quarters, but it has also allowed the show to address social issues in ways that more conventional programming cannot. Episodes dealing with topics like religion, politics, and social justice often use humor as a vehicle for presenting multiple perspectives on complex issues. The technical aspects of Family Guy's production reveal impressive attention to detail that viewers might not notice. The show's color palette has evolved significantly over its run, with newer episodes featuring more sophisticated lighting and shading techniques. Background artists create incredibly detailed environments that often include visual jokes and Easter eggs that reward careful viewers. The Drunken Clam, the Griffin House, and other recurring locations contain hundreds of small details that remain consistent across episodes, creating a lived-in feel that supports the show's fictional world. Family Guy's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. The show's success paved the way for adult-oriented animated comedies like American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and Rick and Morty. Its influence on writing style, particularly the use of non-sequitur cutaway gags and pop culture references, has become a standard template for animated comedy. Many current animated series creators cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their own work, demonstrating its lasting impact on the medium. The show's merchandise empire extends into surprisingly diverse areas. Beyond typical television show merchandise like t-shirts and toys, Family Guy has inspired everything from mobile apps to theme park attractions. The show's characters appear on products ranging from breakfast cereals to automobile accessories. This merchandising success has contributed significantly to the show's financial viability and cultural presence, making Family Guy characters recognizable even to people who don't regularly watch the series. Family Guy's writing team includes some of television's most talented comedy writers, many of whom have gone on to create their own successful series. The show serves as a training ground for comedy writers, providing them with experience in rapid-fire joke writing, character development, and serialized storytelling. Alumni of the Family Guy writing staff have contributed to shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Saturday Night Live, spreading the show's comedic influence throughout the industry. The show's approach to character development over multiple seasons reveals sophisticated long-term storytelling strategies. While Family Guy is known for its episodic nature and reset-button storytelling, careful viewers can trace character evolution across seasons. Stewie's gradual shift from world domination fantasies to more nuanced character interactions, Brian's ongoing struggles with alcoholism and romantic relationships, and Peter's various career changes all represent subtle character development that occurs alongside the show's more obvious comedic elements. Family Guy's relationship with current events and topical humor requires incredibly fast production turnarounds that most viewers don't appreciate. The show's writers and animators often work under extreme time pressure to incorporate recent news events and pop culture phenomena into episodes. This rapid response capability has allowed Family Guy to remain culturally relevant across multiple decades, but it also creates significant production challenges that require careful coordination between writing, animation, and broadcast scheduling. The show's musical parodies and elaborate musical sequences often involve complex licensing negotiations and legal considerations. When Family Guy parodies specific songs or musical styles, the production team must navigate copyright laws while creating content that's clearly transformative enough to qualify for fair use protection. Some of the show's most memorable musical moments required months of legal work behind the scenes, demonstrating the complexity involved in creating seemingly simple comedic content. Family Guy's impact on voice acting as a profession has been substantial and lasting. The show's success has elevated voice acting from a relatively niche specialty to a more mainstream entertainment career path. Seth MacFarlane's multiple voice roles have inspired other actors to develop versatile vocal capabilities, and the show's ensemble cast approach has become a model for other animated series. Voice acting workshops and training programs now regularly reference Family Guy techniques and approaches. The show's digital presence and streaming availability have introduced Family Guy to entirely new generations of viewers who experience the series differently than original broadcast audiences. Binge-watching capabilities allow viewers to notice long-term character arcs and recurring jokes that might be missed during weekly viewing. Streaming platforms have also made international versions and extended cuts available to broader audiences, creating new ways to experience familiar content. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing extends beyond animation into live-action television and film. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall have influenced writers across multiple mediums. Comedy Central roasts, Saturday Night Live sketches, and even stand-up comedy routines now regularly employ techniques that were pioneered or popularized by Family Guy writers. The show's approach to holiday episodes and special events demonstrates sophisticated audience engagement strategies. Family Guy's Christmas, Halloween, and other holiday episodes often feature elaborate production values and guest stars, creating appointment television that generates significant viewer loyalty. These special episodes frequently become fan favorites that get rewatched annually, contributing to the show's lasting cultural presence. As we reach the end of our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's clear that this seemingly simple animated series contains layers of complexity, creativity, and cultural influence that most viewers never fully appreciate. From Seth MacFarlane's one-man vocal circus to the show's groundbreaking approach to adult animation, Family Guy has carved out a unique space in television history that continues to evolve and surprise audiences. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone just discovering the series, these behind-the-scenes insights reveal the incredible amount of talent, dedication, and creative risk-taking that goes into every episode. The show's ability to remain relevant and controversial after more than 2 decades speaks to its creators' understanding of comedy, culture, and the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So the next time you're settling in for a Family Guy marathon, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island. You're experiencing the result of thousands of hours of creative work by some of the most talented people in entertainment, all coming together to create something that's simultaneously ridiculous and profound, offensive and heartwarming, simple and incredibly sophisticated. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably already working on the next episode that will surprise, delight, and possibly outrage audiences all over again. That's the magic of Family Guy. And that's what makes it truly special in the vast landscape of television entertainment. Picture this. You're lying in bed, phone in hand, ready to drift off to the soothing sound of random Family Guy trivia. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because tonight we're diving deep into the most bizarre, shocking, and downright disturbing moments that have happened to every single character in Quahog. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your favorite dysfunctional cartoon family the same way again. Now, before we start this journey through animated trauma, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if the worst day of your life was broadcast on national television for millions to laugh at? Well, that's basically every episode of Family Guy for these poor fictional souls. So grab your favorite pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the darkest corners of Seth MacFarlane's twisted imagination. Starting alphabetically with Adam West, because why not begin with a mayor who's nuttier than a fruitcake? This eccentric political figure finally found his soulmate when he married Carol, Lois's sister. For a guy who regularly talks to his own hand and thinks cardboard cutouts are real people, finding true love seemed like a miracle. The wedding was beautiful, the honeymoon was passionate, and for once in his bizarre life, Adam West looked genuinely happy. But happiness in Family Guy is like a snowball in hell. It melts faster than you can say cutaway gag. Carol decided that one mayor wasn't enough for her appetite, so she started having an affair with another man. When Adam discovered this betrayal, instead of walking away with his dignity intact, he challenged the other guy to a duel. Because nothing says rational response like pistols at dawn, right? The worst part wasn't just the cheating. It was watching this lonely, eccentric man desperately fight for someone who clearly didn't deserve his devotion. Carol promised it would never happen again, but we all knew that was complete garbage. Adam deserved so much better than a woman who treated his heart like a revolving door. Moving on to Angela, Peter's former boss at the toy company. Unlike most characters who simply disappear without explanation, Angela got a proper send-off that hit viewers right in the feels. When voice actress Carrie Fisher passed away in real life, the show made the touching decision to address it directly in the series. According to Peter's explanation, Angela died doing what she loved, which was apparently swimming less than 20 minutes after eating. Now, we all know that's an old wives' tale about getting cramps, but in the Family Guy universe, it was enough to send this strong, independent businesswoman to her watery grave. It's both absurd and oddly respectful, which perfectly captures the show's ability to blend humor with genuine emotion. Barbara Pewterschmidt, or Babs as she's known to friends, has endured decades of her husband Carter's wandering eye. This woman has put up with more infidelity than a reality TV show contestant, and somehow she keeps forgiving him. The breaking point came when Peter caught Carter in bed with yet another woman, and after some classic Griffin family blackmail shenanigans, the secret inevitably came out. Picture the devastation on Babs's face when she realized that everyone knew about her husband's latest affair before she did. The humiliation of being the last to know, the embarrassment of having your private pain become public gossip. It's enough to break anyone's spirit. She kicked his crusty behind out of the house and tried to start fresh, but love makes fools of us all, and she eventually took him back. The irony is that Babs isn't exactly innocent herself. She's had her own affairs over the years, including that memorable encounter with Jackie Gleason. But there's something particularly cruel about Carter's public humiliation of his wife that makes this betrayal sting more than the others. Bonnie Swanson represents the dark side of suburban marriage. When she's not cheating on her paralyzed husband, she's literally trying to murder him with ground glass in his food, or buying rickety houses hoping they'll collapse on him. But karma has a way of coming full circle, and Bonnie got a taste of her own medicine in the most humiliating way possible. During their daughter's birthday party, with friends and family gathered around, Bonnie overheard Joe having an affair with a colleague through the baby monitor. Imagine the mortification of discovering your spouse's betrayal while surrounded by people who are supposed to be celebrating your family. The timing couldn't have been worse, and the method of discovery was like something out of a soap opera nightmare. The fact that this happened during what should have been a joyous occasion for their child makes it even more devastating. Bonnie may be a serial cheater herself, but nobody deserves to have their private pain exposed in such a public and humiliating way. Now let's talk about Brian Griffin, the philosophical dog with more emotional baggage than a therapy convention. Poor Brian has endured countless injuries over the years, from losing his teeth in a fight with Peter to getting his face smashed by a fire hydrant. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was his temporary death in season 12. Getting hit by that car and actually dying, even if it was only for 2 episodes, represents the ultimate trauma for any character. Death is supposed to be permanent, final, the end of all stories. For Brian to experience that ultimate fear and then somehow return to life, the psychological impact must have been enormous. Think about it from his perspective. One moment he's crossing the street, the next he's presumably facing whatever comes after life. Then suddenly he's back, but with the knowledge that death is real, permanent, and can happen at any moment. That kind of existential trauma would mess with anyone's head, even a talking dog who writes pretentious novels. Bruce's story is one of love, acceptance, and heartbreaking loss. After years of hiding his true self, he finally came out, married his longtime partner Jeffrey, and even had a baby through surrogacy. For the first time in his life, Bruce was living authentically, openly, and happily. He had everything he'd ever wanted: a husband, a child, and the freedom to be himself without shame or fear. But Family Guy has never been kind to happiness, and during what should have been a perfect vacation in Bermuda, tragedy struck in the most brutal way imaginable. Jeffrey's hat fell into the water, and being the loving husband he was, he jumped in to retrieve it. That simple act of devotion cost him his life when a shark attacked and killed him in front of Bruce's horrified eyes. The imagery of watching Jeffrey get torn apart by a predator, followed by the soul-crushing sight of 2 coffins being loaded onto the plane, represents a level of trauma that goes beyond physical pain. Bruce had to watch his dreams of a perfect life literally get devoured before his eyes. Carter Pewterschmidt is arguably one of the most evil characters on the show. This billionaire has hidden cancer cures for profit, destroyed countless lives for money, and shown no remorse for any of his actions. But karma caught up with him in the most ironic way possible when Lois accidentally shot him in the head. The bullet caused severe brain damage that completely changed Carter's personality. Suddenly, this cruel capitalist became kind, generous, and caring. He wanted to give away all his money to charity and live a life of compassion instead of greed. For the first time ever, Carter was actually happy and at peace with himself. But Barbara couldn't stand the thought of losing their fortune, so she shot him in the head again, reversing the brain damage and bringing back the cruel version of her husband. The tragedy isn't just that Carter got shot twice by his own family. It's that he briefly experienced what it felt like to be a good person, only to have that stolen away from him. Chris Griffin's worst moment doesn't involve getting turned into sausage or any of the other bizarre things that happen to him regularly. No. His darkest hour came when the Griffin house caught fire and Herbert the creepy neighbor rushed in to supposedly save him. For a brief moment, it looked like Herbert might actually be a hero, but instead of carrying Chris to safety, he took him straight back to his own house. The most disturbing part wasn't even Herbert's actions. It was his family's complete lack of concern. When they discovered what happened, their reaction was basically that Herbert had earned the right to kidnap Chris. The casual acceptance of what was clearly an inappropriate situation shows just how little Chris's family actually cares about his well-being. Cleveland Brown has endured countless humiliations over the years, from his bathtub crashing through his house repeatedly to various other physical mishaps. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was being betrayed by one of his closest friends in the most heinous way imaginable. Joe Swanson tricked Cleveland into going to what he thought was a vacation in Florida, but was actually a retirement home run by seniors who harvest organs from unsuspecting victims. Joe wanted Peter's legs for himself, but when that plan fell through, he sent Cleveland as a substitute without warning him about the danger. Imagine discovering that someone you trusted with your life had essentially sold you out to organ harvesters. Cleveland literally lost his legs because Joe was too selfish to give up his twisted scheme. The betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound because it came from someone he considered family. The mystery of Cleveland Jr. represents one of the show's darkest unsolved cases. The original Cleveland Jr. was energetic, slim, and full of life. But suddenly, without explanation, he was replaced by a completely different person who was overweight, slow, and bore no resemblance to the original character. The official explanation is that the original was replaced by a secret agent, but what actually happened to the real Cleveland Jr. remains unknown. The implications are terrifying. Is he dead? Is he being held captive somewhere? Has he been brainwashed? The uncertainty is almost worse than knowing the truth would be. This represents every parent's worst nightmare, having their child disappear and replaced by an imposter while everyone else pretends nothing happened. Cleveland doesn't even seem to notice or care that his son is completely different, which adds another layer of tragedy to the situation. Consuela works harder than anyone else in Quahog, fighting for her fellow maids while cleaning houses for multiple families and even Superman. But her dedication to helping others led her to work for James Woods, a decision she would come to regret in the most horrific way possible. In one of the show's darkest moments, Consuela revealed that Woods had assaulted her nephew, who later took his own life as a result of the trauma. This single line of dialogue carries more weight than entire episodes of physical comedy. It's a reminder that behind the jokes and gags, these characters have real pain and real trauma. The fact that Consuela continued working and fighting for others despite carrying this enormous burden speaks to her incredible strength. But nobody should have to endure such a devastating loss, especially when it could have been prevented. Death himself, the actual Grim Reaper, experienced his own form of mortality when he twisted his ankle while chasing Peter. Suddenly, the being responsible for all death on Earth was sidelined by a simple injury. Without Death able to do his job, chaos erupted as accidents piled up with no consequences. Being forced to hand over his powers to Peter Griffin, of all people, must have been absolutely humiliating for such a powerful entity. Imagine being rendered helpless by something as mundane as a twisted ankle when you're supposed to be one of the most feared forces in the universe. The irony of Death being unable to die from his own injury while watching Peter bungle the most important job in existence must have been torture. Sometimes the worst pain isn't physical. It's watching someone else destroy everything you've worked for. Diane Simmons's downfall began when she discovered she was being replaced by a younger news anchor. After dedicating her life to journalism, the industry she loved was throwing her away like yesterday's newspaper. The rejection and humiliation drove her to madness, leading to a killing spree at James Woods' mansion party. Her plan to frame Tom Tucker and reclaim her career was as desperate as it was violent. But when it all fell apart and she was about to kill Lois, Stewie ended her reign of terror with a single shot. Going from respected journalist to murderous villain to corpse in a matter of hours represents a complete life collapse that few characters have experienced. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence is legendary, but the one time he actually did his job correctly, it ruined his career. During a routine prostate exam on Peter, he performed the procedure exactly as he was supposed to, but Peter's ignorance and embarrassment led to false assault charges that cost Hartman his medical license. The injustice of losing his livelihood for doing his job properly must have been devastating for someone who, despite his flaws, genuinely wants to help people. Being dragged through court and having his reputation destroyed over a misunderstanding shows how quickly a life can be ruined by ignorance and fear. When Peter later needed the same procedure and had to crawl back to the doctor he destroyed, the humiliation was complete. Hartman eventually got his license back, but the damage to his reputation and the trauma of the legal battle left permanent scars. Ernie the giant chicken has survived countless brutal fights with Peter over the years, but his battle with Meg might have been his last. When Meg moved in with her boyfriend's family and Ernie insulted Peter, she stood up for her father in the most violent way possible. Despite all the abuse Peter has heaped on her over the years, Meg's loyalty to her family ran deep enough that she couldn't stand hearing someone else trash-talk him. Her brutal decapitation of Ernie was both shocking and oddly touching, showing that family bonds can survive even the worst treatment. The sight of Ernie's headless body running around in front of his horrified family was disturbing, even by Family Guy standards. The fact that we didn't get the usual close-up of his eyes suggests this might have been his final defeat, making Meg the one person who could do what Peter never could. The evil monkey's story is actually quite sad when you think about it. For years he terrorized Chris by angrily pointing at him from the closet, but it turns out he was just too shy to start a conversation. All that time, he wasn't evil at all, just socially awkward and misunderstood. But before this revelation, the poor monkey was beaten up by Brian's son Dylan. Being attacked by someone when you're already struggling with social anxiety and communication issues must have been incredibly traumatic. The monkey was already isolated and afraid, and the violence only made things worse. Glenn Quagmire's entire identity revolves around his sexual prowess and his most prized anatomical feature. So when a shark bit off his manhood during a skiing trip, it represented the ultimate nightmare for someone whose whole personality is built around sexual conquest. Watching Quagmire become a shell of himself, miserable and lost without the one thing that defined him, was both comedic and genuinely sad. His entire sense of self-worth was tied to something that could be taken away in an instant, showing how fragile our identities really are. The solution, getting Ida's old equipment with a huge mole on it, was both generous and awkward. Having to explain to potential partners that you're using your father's former anatomy would be enough to give anyone performance anxiety for life. The greased-up deaf guy remained a mystery for years, slipping away from every attempt to catch him while spouting his signature catchphrase. But his origin story revealed a tragic accident that changed him from an ordinary businessman into the greasy enigma we know today. Getting caught in a grease truck explosion severe enough to cause deafness and require constant lubrication to survive sounds absolutely horrifying. Imagine going from a normal life to being a permanently slippery outcast who can't hear and can barely communicate with others. The transformation from respected professional to neighborhood oddity represents a complete loss of identity and social connection. He went from being someone people respected to someone they actively tried to avoid or capture. Herbert's backstory adds a dark historical element to his character. As a World War II pilot who was shot down and sent to a concentration camp, he experienced some of humanity's darkest hours. Being forced to do degrading work like sorting recyclables while imprisoned shows how war can strip away dignity and humanity. The fact that he describes the sticky trash as the worst part, while clearly downplaying much more serious trauma, suggests a coping mechanism of focusing on minor irritations to avoid confronting deeper pain. His current inappropriate behavior toward Chris might stem from the psychological damage of his wartime experiences. Ida's journey represents the struggle of living authentically while facing rejection from those you love most. When she came out as transgender to her son Quagmire, instead of receiving support, she was shunned and rejected. Being abandoned by your own child for being true to yourself is one of the cruelest forms of emotional pain. Even after Quagmire eventually accepted her, he later forced her to choose between him and her relationship with Brian. Making someone pick between their child and their chance at happiness is pure selfishness, especially after she had already made the generous gesture of giving him her former anatomy. Joe Swanson's transformation from paraplegic to quadriplegic during a bull run represents every disabled person's worst fear, losing even more independence and control over their life. Being paralyzed from the neck down instead of just the waist changed everything for him. The abandonment that followed was even worse than the physical trauma. His wife Bonnie immediately left him for Europe, claiming she didn't sign up for this level of care. His friends tried to help, but eventually dumped him in a terrible state facility when it became too much work. Being betrayed by both your spouse and your closest friends when you need them most is a special kind of hell. Joe eventually regained some function, but the emotional scars of abandonment would last forever. Jerome carries the heaviest emotional burden of any character on the show. Losing his wife to cancer just 1 week after their wedding, followed by his daughter's death from pneumonia 6 weeks later, represents a level of tragedy that transcends comedy. Even in a cartoon universe where death and destruction happen regularly, Jerome's story stands out as genuinely heartbreaking. The timing of these losses, coming right after what should have been the happiest moments of his life, makes the tragedy even more poignant. Jillian's happiness was shattered when Diane Simmons murdered her husband Derek during her killing spree. After being jerked around by Brian and finally finding a good man to marry, having that torn away by random violence must have been devastating. The look of absolute devastation on her face when she realized her husband was dead spoke volumes about the depth of her loss. Going from newlywed bliss to widow in a matter of moments represents the kind of trauma that changes someone forever. The Kool-Aid Man, despite being a corporate mascot, became a victim of Stewie's evil twin in one of the show's more surreal moments. Having your glass body smashed and your contents consumed by a psychotic baby represents a uniquely cartoonish form of murder. The fact that he returned later suggests some form of immortality, but the experience of being destroyed and consumed must have been traumatic even for a sentient beverage container. Lois Griffin has endured tremendous physical and emotional trauma over the years. While getting killed by Stewie in a simulation doesn't count as real, her other experiences are genuinely horrific. Getting boiling oil thrown on her by Peter left her with severe burns covering her entire body, but arguably worse was the mental trauma of watching Peter perform oral acts on her sick mother due to a hypnotherapy mishap. Physical burns heal, but that mental image would haunt her forever. The violation of boundaries and the grotesque nature of the incident make it worse than any physical injury. Loretta Brown's death was both tragic and disturbing. Falling to her death when Peter destroyed her house was bad enough, but Quagmire's necrophilic intentions afterward added another layer of horror to her fate. Being killed by your ex-husband's friend's stupidity and then having your corpse violated represents a complete denial of dignity, even in death. The fact that this was played for laughs makes it even more disturbing. Meg Griffin has endured so much abuse that choosing just one worst moment seems impossible. She's been shot, stabbed, humiliated, and ignored by her family for years, but losing her arms and legs while becoming deaf, dumb, and blind represents the ultimate disability nightmare. Being completely helpless and unable to communicate or care for yourself while still being conscious and aware would be torture beyond imagination. The combination of physical disability and sensory deprivation creates a prison worse than any jail cell. Mort Goldman's loss of his wife Muriel was made even more tragic by his inability to think of anything positive to say about their marriage. After decades together, being unable to recall a single happy memory suggests a relationship built on obligation rather than love. The fact that she died violently during Diane's killing spree adds sudden trauma to what might have otherwise been a natural parting. Having your spouse murdered while you're realizing your marriage was empty creates a complex grief that would be hard to process. Neil Goldman's humiliation when Meg kissed him during a crisis was compounded by his own poor judgment in broadcasting the moment publicly. Instead of treasuring a private moment, he turned it into a public spectacle that embarrassed them both. His subsequent suicide attempt showed how deeply the rejection affected him, but his actions had already ruined any chance he might have had with Meg. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are consequences of our own poor choices. Peter Griffin has caused enormous destruction throughout the series, but he's also been on the receiving end of significant trauma. Learning that his father figure wasn't his biological father created an identity crisis that shook his understanding of who he was. The existential pain of questioning your entire life story and family history cuts deeper than any physical injury. Peter's struggle to understand his place in the world after this revelation showed a vulnerability that's rare for his character. Seamus represents the ultimate survivor, having lost most of his body parts to various predators over the years. Whether it was James Woods, sharks, or other creatures, the systematic loss of limbs and organs while somehow remaining alive and conscious is a nightmare beyond comprehension. The fact that his origin story keeps changing suggests that the trauma was so severe he can't even remember it clearly. Living as mostly wood and prosthetics while maintaining consciousness would be a constant reminder of everything he's lost. Stewie Griffin has endured incredible trauma for a 1-year-old baby. From dingo attacks to being fused with his teddy bear, his young life has been filled with horror. But the worst incident was when he split his head open falling downstairs, and his family refused to get him medical attention. Instead of rushing him to the hospital, they tried to cover up the injury and hide the evidence. Watching a raccoon gnaw on his exposed brain, while his family worried more about getting in trouble than his health, shows a level of neglect that borders on criminal. The fact that he spent months in a coma while they continued to prioritize their own convenience over his life demonstrates how little they truly care about him despite their occasional shows of affection. Tom Tucker's identity crisis when he faced replacement by a younger anchor led to a complete career meltdown. Following Peter's advice to get tattoos live on air was the final nail in his professional coffin, destroying everything he'd worked for his entire life. Being fired from the job that defined him and then nearly committing suicide over the loss shows how completely his sense of self was tied to his career. The humiliation of having his replacement want to interview him before his suicide attempt added insult to injury. Trisha Takanawa's fate during the Y2K Apocalypse episode, becoming a victim of cannibalism, represents the ultimate objectification. Being reduced to literal food for other people strips away every aspect of humanity and dignity. Even in a post-apocalyptic setting, the casual way her consumption was discussed shows how completely society had broken down and how little value was placed on individual human life. Each of these characters has faced their own unique form of suffering, from physical trauma to emotional devastation to existential crisis. What makes these moments particularly impactful is how they contrast with the show's usual comedic tone. When Family Guy decides to get dark, it doesn't hold back. These aren't just random gags or throwaway jokes. They're genuine character moments that reveal the psychological depth hiding beneath the surface humor. The fact that these characters continue to function and interact normally after experiencing such trauma speaks to both human resilience and the show's commitment to treating serious subjects with the same casual attitude as everything else. Understanding these worst moments helps us appreciate the full scope of what these characters have endured. It's easy to laugh at their misfortunes when they're presented as comedy, but examining them seriously reveals a tapestry of human suffering that would challenge anyone's sanity. The genius of Family Guy lies in its ability to make us laugh at things that would horrify us in real life. By presenting extreme trauma in a comedic context, the show allows us to process difficult emotions and experiences in a safe environment. These characters serve as vessels for our own fears and anxieties, experiencing the worst possible outcomes so we don't have to. Their resilience in the face of unimaginable suffering provides a strange form of comfort and inspiration. Whether it's betrayal by loved ones, physical mutilation, loss of identity, or complete abandonment, every character has faced their ultimate nightmare and somehow survived to appear in the next episode. The cyclical nature of their suffering, where trauma is quickly forgotten and life returns to normal, reflects how we often deal with our own pain by compartmentalizing and moving forward rather than dwelling on past hurts. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can take comfort in knowing that no matter how bad your day was, at least you're not a Family Guy character. At least you don't have to worry about your house being destroyed by a giant chicken, your spouse cheating with your neighbor, or your family refusing to take you to the hospital when your brain is exposed. Sweet dreams, and remember that in the morning, you'll wake up in a world that's probably a little less chaotic than Quahog, Rhode Island. Though given the state of things these days, that might not be as comforting as it used to be. But hey, that's a worry for tomorrow. Tonight, just let the absurd suffering of animated characters lull you into peaceful slumber, secure in the knowledge that your problems are probably more manageable than theirs. Sleep tight, and don't let the evil monkeys point at you from the closet. Have you ever wondered if Stewie Griffin is actually a psychopath or just a misunderstood genius? What if I told you that the creators of Family Guy have hidden some of the most disturbing and fascinating secrets about this baby that would completely change how you see the show forever? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the darkest corners of animated television. Today, we're uncovering the shocking lore behind one of animation's most controversial characters. From hidden meanings in his accent to disturbing implications about his sexuality and time travel adventures, we're about to explore Family Guy's secrets that even die-hard fans have missed. But before we start, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you think, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's start with something that will blow your mind right away. Stewie's British accent isn't just a random character quirk. According to the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, there's a deeply psychological reason behind it. The accent represents Stewie's desperate attempt to distance himself from his family and create a superior identity. It's actually a defense mechanism rooted in childhood trauma and feelings of abandonment. Think about it. Stewie is surrounded by what he perceives as intellectual inferiors. His father Peter is portrayed as bumbling and crude, his mother Lois often dismisses him, and his siblings fail to engage with his advanced intellect. The British accent becomes his way of elevating himself above what he sees as American mediocrity. It's not just pretentious, it's protective. But here's where it gets really interesting. Voice actor Seth MacFarlane has revealed in interviews that the accent was originally inspired by Rex Harrison's performance in My Fair Lady, specifically the character of Henry Higgins. Harrison's character was known for being intellectually arrogant and emotionally distant from others. Sound familiar? This connection runs deeper than you might think. Henry Higgins was a character who viewed himself as superior to everyone around him, particularly women, and had difficulty forming genuine emotional connections. These are exact parallels to Stewie's character development throughout the series. The accent isn't just mimicry, it's psychological modeling. Moving into even more disturbing territory, let's talk about Stewie's relationship with violence and murder. In early seasons, Stewie's homicidal tendencies weren't played entirely for laughs. The writers included subtle hints that his violent thoughts stem from genuine psychological disturbance rather than typical childhood acting out. Consider his detailed knowledge of weapons, torture techniques, and murder methods. This isn't information a normal one-year-old would possess, even in an animated universe. The show's writers have suggested that Stewie's intelligence comes with a dark side, an inability to process normal, emotional responses to conflict. There's a particularly chilling episode where Stewie creates a simulation of killing Lois, and his satisfaction with the violence goes beyond typical cartoon comedy. The writers included psychological details that suggest Stewie experiences genuine pleasure from imagining harm to others. This crosses the line from innocent childhood fantasy into something much more concerning. What makes this even more unsettling is how other characters react to Stewie's violent statements. Most of the time, they can't understand him or they dismiss his comments as baby babbling. But the few characters who do understand him, like Brian, often seem genuinely disturbed by what Stewie says. This suggests that even within the show's universe, Stewie's thoughts are recognized as abnormal. Now let's dive into one of the most controversial aspects of Stewie's character development. His sexuality has been a source of debate and speculation since the show began. But there are hidden clues that reveal the writer's true intentions. Seth MacFarlane has made several statements over the years suggesting that Stewie is gay. But the way this has been handled in the show reveals some problematic undertones. Rather than presenting his sexuality as a natural part of his character development, it's often used as shock value or comedic relief. There's an uncomfortable pattern in how the show handles Stewie's potential relationships with male characters. His interactions with other boys his age, his fascination with certain male celebrities, and his reactions to romantic situations all contain coded language that adult viewers recognize but children watching wouldn't understand. The most disturbing aspect is how the show uses Stewie's age to make jokes about adult themes. Because he's technically a baby, the writers can include sexual innuendo and mature content that would be completely inappropriate if he were portrayed as his actual age emotionally and mentally. This creates a strange cognitive dissonance for viewers. We're supposed to accept Stewie as intellectually mature enough to understand complex concepts, build advanced technology, and engage in philosophical discussions. But then the show treats his sexuality as a punchline specifically because of his physical age. The time travel elements of Stewie's character open up another disturbing can of worms. Throughout the series, Stewie has demonstrated the ability to travel through time and alternate dimensions. But if you pay close attention to these episodes, there are implications that Stewie has been manipulating events in ways that benefit him psychologically. Consider the episode where Stewie and Brian travel to different time periods. Stewie shows remarkably little concern for the consequences of changing historical events. He's willing to potentially erase people from existence or alter major world events just to satisfy his curiosity or desires. This reveals a fundamental lack of empathy that goes beyond typical childhood selfishness. Stewie understands that his actions can cause suffering to others, but he simply doesn't care. He views other people, even those he claims to love, as expendable if they interfere with his goals. There's also the disturbing implication that Stewie may have used time travel to manipulate his own family relationships. Several episodes hint that he's been to the future and knows how certain events will play out. Yet he allows traumatic things to happen to his family members because it serves his purposes. The relationship between Stewie and Brian deserves special attention because it reveals some of the darkest aspects of Stewie's psychology. On the surface, their friendship appears to be the one genuine emotional connection Stewie has made. But when you examine their interactions closely, a more troubling pattern emerges. Stewie often treats Brian more like a pet than a friend, despite Brian's obvious intelligence and emotional needs. He manipulates Brian's insecurities about his writing career, his drinking problem, and his romantic failures. Stewie provides just enough support to keep Brian dependent on their relationship, but not enough to actually help Brian grow as a person. This is classic emotional manipulation. Stewie has identified Brian's weaknesses and uses them to maintain control over their relationship. He offers Brian intellectual stimulation and adventure that Brian can't find elsewhere, creating a situation where Brian becomes psychologically dependent on Stewie's attention. The most disturbing aspect is how Stewie reacts when Brian tries to form relationships with others. He becomes jealous and possessive, often sabotaging Brian's attempts at happiness with other characters. This isn't the behavior of a true friend. It's the behavior of someone who views others as possessions. Let's talk about something that will completely change how you view Stewie's character. The show's writers have included subtle hints that Stewie may not actually be as intelligent as he appears. Instead, much of his advanced knowledge and technological ability may be the result of accessing information from alternate dimensions or future timelines. Think about it logically. How does a 1-year-old acquire the knowledge necessary to build time machines, death rays, and mind control devices? Even accounting for the show's absurd universe, this level of technological sophistication requires decades of study and experience. The answer may be that Stewie isn't learning this information in the traditional sense. He's accessing it through his interdimensional travel abilities. This would explain why his knowledge seems to appear spontaneously, and why he sometimes knows things that haven't been invented yet in his timeline. If this theory is correct, it raises disturbing questions about Stewie's true nature. Is he actually a 1-year-old human, or is he something else entirely? The show has hinted at supernatural elements in Stewie's character that go beyond simple genius-level intelligence. This would also explain why Stewie's personality seems to shift dramatically between episodes. Different versions of Stewie from alternate dimensions might be influencing or occasionally replacing the original. This isn't just speculation. There are episodes where multiple Stewies appear and they have distinctly different personalities and moral frameworks. The financial implications of Stewie's inventions reveal another dark secret about his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has created technology that would be worth billions of dollars in the real world. Time travel, teleportation, advanced robotics, genetic manipulation. These are technologies that would revolutionize human civilization. Yet Stewie never seems interested in using his inventions to improve the world, or even to improve his family's financial situation. The Griffins continue to live in a modest middle-class home despite having access to technology that could solve most of humanity's problems. This reveals something deeply selfish about Stewie's nature. He's not interested in helping others or making the world a better place. He creates advanced technology purely for his own amusement or to solve his personal problems. The potential benefits to humanity are irrelevant to him. Even more disturbing is what this says about his view of human suffering. Stewie has the ability to cure diseases, solve poverty, prevent wars, and eliminate countless sources of human misery. His choice not to do so suggests that he views human suffering as either unimportant or potentially entertaining. The show's handling of Stewie's relationship with his parents reveals some of the most psychologically complex aspects of his character. His hatred for Lois isn't just typical mother-son conflict blown out of proportion. There are hints that Stewie's hostility stems from a deep-seated fear of emotional vulnerability. Lois represents everything that threatens Stewie's carefully constructed identity. She's emotionally intuitive. She sees through his intellectual pretensions, and she offers the kind of unconditional love that Stewie finds terrifying. His plots to kill her aren't really about hatred. They're about eliminating what he perceives as a threat to his psychological defenses. Peter, on the other hand, represents everything Stewie fears becoming. Peter's intellectual limitations, emotional openness, and general contentment with life are the opposite of everything Stewie believes makes him superior. His contempt for Peter is actually a projection of his own insecurities about masculinity and emotional expression. The most tragic aspect of Stewie's character is that his intelligence isolates him from the very connections he desperately needs. He's created an identity based on intellectual superiority that prevents him from experiencing genuine emotional intimacy with others. This psychological isolation explains many of Stewie's more extreme behaviors. His violence, manipulation, and general disregard for others aren't signs of inherent evil. They're desperate attempts to feel some kind of connection or control in a world where his intelligence makes genuine relationships nearly impossible. The show's writers have included several episodes that hint at what Stewie might become as an adult, and the implications are truly disturbing. Future versions of Stewie are typically portrayed as either megalomaniacal world leaders or completely isolated hermits. Neither option suggests healthy psychological development. This raises uncomfortable questions about whether Stewie's character arc is actually a tragedy disguised as comedy. Are we watching a brilliant child slowly transform into a monster because his intelligence prevents him from developing normal emotional connections? The most chilling aspect is that Stewie seems aware of these potential futures, but appears unable or unwilling to change course. He's trapped by his own psychological defenses and his need to maintain his identity as intellectually superior to everyone around him. One of the most overlooked aspects of Stewie's character is his relationship with technology and how it reflects his view of human relationships. Stewie frequently builds robots, artificial intelligences, and other mechanical beings to serve his needs. But pay attention to how he treats these creations. Stewie programs his technological creations to be completely subservient to his will. They have no independent thoughts or desires that might conflict with his own. This reveals his ideal relationship dynamic. He wants connections with others, but only if they involve complete control on his part. When his creations do develop independence or challenge his authority, Stewie typically destroys them without hesitation. This pattern reveals how he would likely treat human relationships if he had the same level of control over people that he has over his inventions. The most disturbing example of this is how Stewie reacts when his creations show genuine emotions or desires for independence. Rather than being proud of creating truly intelligent life, he views their independence as a betrayal and responds with violence. This suggests that Stewie's inability to form healthy relationships isn't just due to his intelligence or psychological issues. He fundamentally doesn't understand or value the autonomy of others. He wants connection, but only on his terms and only if it doesn't challenge his sense of superiority. The show's exploration of Stewie's moral development, or lack thereof, reveals some of the most troubling aspects of his character. Throughout the series, Stewie has numerous opportunities to learn empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others. Yet he consistently fails to internalize these lessons in any meaningful way. What makes this particularly disturbing is that Stewie clearly understands moral concepts intellectually. He can discuss ethics, philosophy, and the difference between right and wrong with sophisticated language and apparent understanding. But this intellectual knowledge doesn't translate into emotional understanding or behavioral change. This disconnect between intellectual and emotional intelligence suggests that Stewie may be fundamentally incapable of genuine moral growth. He can understand why others value compassion and empathy, but he cannot experience these emotions himself in any authentic way. The implications of this for his future development are truly frightening. A person with Stewie's intelligence and technological abilities, but without genuine empathy or moral constraints, represents one of the most dangerous personality types imaginable. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Stewie Griffin's disturbing psychology, it's clear that this character represents far more than simple cartoon comedy. The writers of Family Guy have created a complex psychological portrait of a brilliant but fundamentally damaged individual whose intelligence has become both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weakness. Stewie's story serves as a dark commentary on the relationship between intelligence and emotional development. His character suggests that intellectual ability without emotional growth and genuine human connection can lead to the kind of isolated superiority complex that historically produces some of humanity's most dangerous individuals. The most unsettling aspect of Stewie's character is how his journey reflects real-world concerns about gifted children who don't receive proper emotional support and guidance. His psychological isolation, manipulative tendencies, and inability to form genuine relationships are all documented risks for highly intelligent individuals who don't develop healthy coping mechanisms. What makes Family Guy's portrayal particularly effective is how it disguises these serious psychological themes within absurd comedy. Viewers can laugh at Stewie's antics while unconsciously absorbing a much darker message about the potential consequences of emotional neglect and intellectual isolation. The show's writers have created a character who forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of intelligence, morality, and human connection. Stewie Griffin isn't just a funny cartoon baby. He's a warning about what happens when brilliance develops without wisdom, when intelligence grows without empathy, and when technological ability advances without moral development. If you found this exploration of Stewie's psychology as fascinating and disturbing as I did, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden meanings behind your favorite animated characters. Leave a comment below with your thoughts about Stewie's character development and whether you think there's hope for his psychological growth. And if you're ready to have your mind blown again, check out our video about the dark secrets hidden in SpongeBob SquarePants that will completely change how you see that show forever. Trust me, once you see what we've uncovered, you'll never look at Bikini Bottom the same way again. Have you ever wondered why Meg Griffin is treated so terribly by her own family? What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Family Guy forever. I'm talking about hidden lore, deleted scenes, and creator secrets that explain everything about the most hated character on television. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at Meg the same way again. But before we dive into these shocking revelations, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Peter literally abuse his daughter and just laughed it off? How many times have you seen Lois completely ignore Meg's cries for help? What if I told you there's a disturbing reason behind all of this, and it's way darker than you think? Let's start with something that will blow your mind. Meg Griffin wasn't always supposed to be the punching bag of the Griffin family. In the original concept art and early story treatments, Meg was designed to be the voice of reason, the straight man character who would call out the family's absurd behavior. She was meant to be relatable, intelligent, and the character viewers would connect with most. But something changed during production that transformed her into the most abused character in animated television history. The transformation of Meg Griffin began with a simple creative decision that snowballed into something much more sinister. Seth MacFarlane and the writing team discovered that having Meg be the target of jokes created an easy comedic formula. Need a quick laugh? Have someone insult Meg. Running short on time? Make Meg the butt of a cruel joke. What started as occasional comic relief became systematic psychological torture disguised as family entertainment. Here's where it gets really disturbing. The writers didn't just randomly choose Meg to be the family scapegoat. They specifically crafted her character to represent every teenage girl who feels invisible, unloved, and rejected by their family. Think about it. Meg's experiences mirror the real struggles of millions of teenagers who feel like outsiders in their own homes. The show takes these genuine feelings of adolescent pain and turns them into punchlines for adult entertainment. But wait, there's more. Did you know that Lacey Chabert, the original voice of Meg, left the show after just one season? The official reason given was scheduling conflicts, but industry insiders tell a different story. Chabert reportedly became uncomfortable with the increasingly cruel direction of Meg's character. She allegedly expressed concerns about the psychological implications of voicing a character who suffered such relentless abuse, even in a cartoon format. When Mila Kunis took over the role, she brought a different energy to Meg, but the character's treatment only got worse. The writers seemed to interpret Kunis's stronger vocal presence as permission to heap even more abuse on Meg. It's as if they felt they needed to work harder to break down this version of the character, leading to increasingly disturbing storylines and more brutal family dynamics. Let's talk about the episode that was so controversial it was partially rewritten before airing. In the original version of Barely Legal, Meg's obsession with Brian was portrayed much more sympathetically. The initial script showed Meg as a lonely teenager desperately seeking any form of affection, with Brian genuinely caring about her well-being. But the network demanded changes, wanting more comedic moments at Meg's expense. The final version transformed Meg's legitimate emotional needs into creepy stalker behavior, making her the villain of her own story. Here's something that will make your skin crawl. The show's writers have admitted in interviews that they use Meg as a testing ground for how far they can push controversial content. If a joke about domestic abuse, mental illness, or teenage depression doesn't work with other characters, they try it with Meg first. She's literally a guinea pig for the most disturbing content the show produces. The reasoning? If viewers are already conditioned to see Meg as deserving of mistreatment, they are less likely to object to increasingly dark humor. The psychological profile of Meg Griffin reveals something truly heartbreaking. She exhibits classic symptoms of severe depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her desperate attempts to fit in, her willingness to endure abuse for even momentary acceptance, and her complete lack of self-worth all point to a character who has been systematically broken down by years of family trauma. The show presents this as comedy, but it's actually a textbook case study of emotional and psychological abuse. But here's where the lore gets really twisted. There's an unaired episode from Season 3 that was deemed too dark for broadcast. In this episode, titled Meg's Breaking Point, the character finally snaps and confronts her family about their treatment of her. The episode was fully animated and voiced before being pulled from the schedule. According to leaked production notes, the episode ended with Meg attempting to leave the family permanently, only to be guilt-tripped into staying by a manipulative speech from Peter about how the family needs her to abuse. The censored content doesn't stop there. Multiple episodes have had scenes removed that showed the long-term psychological effects of the family's treatment of Meg. These deleted scenes included Meg self-harming, having panic attacks, and showing signs of dissociation during family interactions. The network apparently felt these realistic consequences of abuse were too heavy for a comedy show, but they were perfectly fine with the abuse itself continuing episode after episode. Let's examine the most disturbing aspect of Meg's character development. Over the years, she's been conditioned to believe she deserves the mistreatment she receives. This is called learned helplessness, a psychological phenomenon where abuse victims begin to accept their situation as normal and stop trying to escape or improve their circumstances. The show has documented this process in real time, showing viewers exactly how psychological abuse breaks down a person's will to resist. Family Guy's treatment of Meg becomes even more disturbing when you consider the show's massive influence on popular culture. Millions of viewers, including impressionable teenagers, watch this show and learn that it's acceptable and even funny to systematically torment family members who are perceived as different or unpopular. The show has normalized family dysfunction to a degree that's genuinely concerning for child psychologists and family therapists. The voice acting reveals another layer of this disturbing lore. Mila Kunis has admitted in interviews that voicing Meg's more heartbreaking moments genuinely affects her emotionally. She's described having to take breaks during recording sessions when Meg's dialogue becomes too realistic in its portrayal of despair and hopelessness. The fact that professional voice actors struggle with this content should tell us something about how genuinely dark it really is. There's also the hidden symbolism in Meg's character design that most viewers never notice. Her pink beanie isn't just a fashion choice. It's meant to represent her attempt to hide and protect herself from the world. Her oversized clothes are armor against judgment and criticism. Even her glasses represent her desire to see the world clearly, while feeling that the world refuses to see her at all. Every aspect of her appearance tells the story of someone trying to disappear. The show's international versions reveal even more disturbing lore about Meg. In several countries, episodes featuring extreme Meg abuse have been edited or banned entirely. Some international broadcasters have added content warnings specifically for Meg-centric episodes, treating them as potentially harmful content rather than simple comedy. This raises serious questions about why American audiences are considered more accepting of this type of content. Here's something that will shock you about the show's merchandise and marketing. Despite being a main character, Meg is systematically excluded from most Family Guy promotional materials. Official merchandise featuring the Griffin family often leaves Meg out entirely, or places her in the background. This marketing strategy mirrors the character's treatment in the show itself, making her invisible even in promotional contexts. The fan community's relationship with Meg reveals the character's true cultural impact. While most characters have dedicated fan bases, Meg's fans are primarily people who identify with feeling like family outcasts themselves. The character has become an unintentional symbol for anyone who's ever felt unloved, unwanted, or systematically mistreated by those who should care for them most. This wasn't the creator's intention, but it's become Meg's most significant cultural legacy. Recent seasons have included subtle hints that the writers are beginning to recognize the problematic nature of Meg's treatment. There have been episodes where her family's behavior toward her is called out by other characters, and moments where Meg shows unexpected strength and self-respect. However, these moments are always followed by a return to the status quo, suggesting that the show is trapped by its own established dynamics. The most disturbing piece of Family Guy lore involving Meg comes from a writer's room story that was leaked several years ago. During the creation of an episode focused on Meg's birthday, the writing staff apparently spent an entire day brainstorming ways to make her special day as miserable as possible. The goal wasn't comedy. It was seeing how creatively they could torture the character psychologically while maintaining the show's tone. This reveals a level of systematic cruelty in the creative process that goes far beyond simple comedic writing. But perhaps the most shocking revelation about Meg Griffin is what she represents in terms of the show's larger themes. Family Guy isn't actually a show about a dysfunctional family learning to love each other despite their flaws. It's a show about how families can systematically destroy their most vulnerable members while convincing themselves and others that it's all harmless fun. Meg is the canary in the coal mine, the character whose treatment reveals the true darkness lurking beneath the show's comedic surface. The psychological research that's been conducted on Family Guy's impact specifically cites Meg's treatment as potentially harmful to viewers who identify with her character. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to this type of normalized family abuse can actually affect how viewers perceive their own family dynamics. Young people who see themselves in Meg might begin to accept similar treatment in their own lives as normal or deserved. What makes this even more concerning is the show's longevity and cultural penetration. Meg Griffin has been suffering this abuse for over 2 decades, across hundreds of episodes, reaching billions of viewers worldwide. The character has become one of television's most recognizable symbols of systematic family scapegoating, and that influence extends far beyond entertainment into real social attitudes about family dynamics and acceptable behavior. The voice direction for Meg's character provides another window into how deliberately her suffering is crafted. Voice directors reportedly give specific instructions to emphasize Meg's pain, disappointment, and desperation in ways that make these emotions more pronounced and uncomfortable. The goal isn't just to make her a comedic target, but to make her suffering feel authentic enough to create a specific type of uncomfortable humor that some viewers apparently find entertaining. Industry insiders have revealed that several guest stars have refused to participate in episodes that focused heavily on Meg's mistreatment. Some notable actors and comedians have reportedly declined guest appearances specifically because they were uncomfortable contributing to storylines that portrayed systematic family abuse as comedic entertainment. This behind-the-scenes resistance suggests that even entertainment professionals recognize something disturbing about Meg's treatment. The international psychological community has actually used Family Guy, and specifically Meg's character arc, as a case study in how popular media can normalize abuse dynamics. The show is frequently cited in academic papers about media influence on social attitudes toward family violence and psychological abuse. Meg Griffin has become an unintentional but powerful example of how entertainment can shape cultural attitudes toward vulnerable populations. Here's the most disturbing realization of all. The systematic abuse of Meg Griffin isn't just a byproduct of lazy comedy writing or poor character development. It's a carefully maintained dynamic that serves a specific function in the show's structure. Meg exists to absorb all the darkness that would otherwise make the other characters completely unlikable. She's a lightning rod for cruelty, allowing Peter, Lois, and the others to commit terrible acts, while still being positioned as the protagonists viewers should root for. The merchandising data reveals something equally troubling about how the character is perceived by the show's marketing department. Internal documents from licensing deals show that Meg-focused products consistently underperform compared to other characters, leading to a systematic exclusion from product lines. This creates a feedback loop where the character's treatment in the show influences her commercial viability, which then influences how she's treated in future episodes. Family Guy's treatment of Meg Griffin represents something much darker than simple comedy. or even typical dysfunctional family dynamics. It's a systematic portrayal of how families can destroy their most vulnerable members while maintaining a facade of normalcy and even affection. The show has documented this process across hundreds of episodes, creating what may be television's most comprehensive depiction of long-term psychological abuse, disguised as entertainment. The character of Meg Griffin started as a typical teenage daughter character, but evolved into something much more disturbing. She's become a symbol of how systematic mistreatment can break down a person's sense of self-worth and hope. The show's writers have created a character whose primary function is to suffer, and they've done it with such consistency and creativity that it reveals something genuinely troubling about how our culture views acceptable targets for cruelty and abuse. So the next time you watch Family Guy and see Meg being mistreated by her family, remember that you're not just watching a simple cartoon comedy. You're witnessing the most comprehensive portrayal of systematic family abuse ever broadcast as entertainment. And the disturbing lore behind this character reveals truths about our culture that are far more unsettling than anything you'll see in a typical horror movie. The real question isn't why Meg is treated so badly, but why millions of viewers have been conditioned to find that treatment entertaining rather than horrifying. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled twice, and that Seth MacFarlane almost died on September 11th, which completely changed the show's trajectory forever? What if I told you that the Griffin family house has a secret basement that's been hidden in plain sight for over 2 decades? Or that Stewie's sexuality was originally planned to be revealed in a completely different way that would have shocked audiences worldwide? Welcome back to another deep dive into animated television history. I'm your host, and today, we're exploring the most mind-blowing Family Guy lore that even die-hard fans probably don't know about. From behind-the-scenes secrets that nearly destroyed the show to hidden Easter eggs that connect to other animated universes, this is going to be one wild ride through Quahog and beyond. But before we jump into this rabbit hole of shocking revelations, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're about to uncover some seriously explosive content that YouTube's algorithm doesn't want you to see. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Family Guy the same way again. Let's start with something that will absolutely blow your mind. Seth MacFarlane was originally supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11th, 2001. Yes, you heard that right. The creator of Family Guy was supposed to be on the first plane that hit the World Trade Center. He missed the flight by just 10 minutes because of a hangover and a travel agent who gave him the wrong departure time. This near-death experience completely changed his perspective on life and directly influenced the darker, more satirical direction that Family Guy would eventually take in its later seasons. Think about this for a second. If MacFarlane had been on that flight, we would never have gotten the revival seasons of Family Guy, American Dad, or The Orville. The entire landscape of animated comedy would be completely different. But here's where it gets even more twisted. MacFarlane has admitted in interviews that this experience made him realize how fragile life really is, which is why the show became increasingly more nihilistic and dark as the years went on. The random violence, the complete disregard for character development, and the increasingly absurd situations all stem from this one life-changing moment. Now let's talk about something that will make you question everything you think you know about the Griffin family. The house at 31 Spooner Street has a secret basement that's been featured in multiple episodes. But here's what most people don't realize. This basement connects to a network of underground tunnels that run throughout all of Quahog. These tunnels have appeared in at least 7 different episodes across various seasons, but they're never explicitly connected or explained. In one episode, we see Peter emerge from a manhole cover near the drunken clam. In another, Stewie discovers a hidden passage behind his bedroom wall. That leads to what appears to be the same tunnel system. The most revealing moment comes in a throwaway gag where Brian is chasing a tennis ball and disappears down a storm drain, only to emerge from the Griffin's basement minutes later. This isn't just random comedy writing. There's actually a consistent underground geography to Quahog that the writers have been building for years. But here's where it gets really interesting. These tunnels connect to similar underground systems in other Seth MacFarlane shows. If you pay close attention to certain episodes of American Dad, you'll notice that the CIA headquarters has access to tunnels that look remarkably similar to the ones in Family Guy. There's even a brief scene in the Cleveland show where Cleveland falls through his floorboards and lands in what appears to be the same tunnel system before the scene cuts away. This suggests that all of McFarlane's animated universes might actually be connected through this underground network. It's like a multiverse theory, but instead of parallel dimensions, it's all happening in the same world with hidden connections that most viewers never notice. Speaking of hidden connections, let's talk about Stewie Griffin and the most controversial aspect of his character development. Everyone knows that Stewie's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years, with McFarlane giving contradictory statements about whether the character is gay, straight, or something else entirely. But here's what most people don't know. There was originally a planned storyline that would have definitively answered this question, and it was going to be revealed in the most shocking way possible. According to leaked production documents from 2008, there was a planned two-part episode called Stewie's Choice that would have featured an adult version of Stewie traveling back in time to have a conversation with his infant self about his future identity. The adult Stewie was going to reveal that he's actually pansexual, and that his early obsession with matricide was actually a misdirected expression of his confusion about his own identity and place in the world. The episode was going to explore how Stewie's advanced intelligence and emotional maturity as an infant made him aware of concepts and feelings that he couldn't properly process or understand. His violent fantasies about Lois were supposed to represent his frustration with being trapped in a body and family situation that couldn't accommodate his true nature. It would have been groundbreaking television, addressing themes of identity, sexuality, and family dynamics in a way that animated comedy had never attempted before. But the episode was scrapped at the last minute because Fox executives were concerned about the potential backlash from conservative viewers and advertisers. Instead, we got the ambiguous approach that the show has maintained ever since, with Stewie's sexuality remaining deliberately unclear. McFarlane has expressed regret about this decision in later interviews, saying that he wishes he had fought harder to tell that story. This brings us to one of the most shocking pieces of Family Guy lore that involves the show's cancellation and revival. Most fans know that Family Guy was canceled after 3 seasons and then brought back due to strong DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns. But what most people don't know is that during the cancellation period, there was a secret season that was produced but never aired. This lost season, sometimes referred to as Season 0, by animators who worked on it, consisted of 13 episodes that were completed between 2003 and 2004. These episodes were darker, more experimental, and pushed boundaries that even the current version of Family Guy wouldn't dare cross. One episode featured Peter accidentally killing a neighbor and the entire family having to cover it up. Another showed Brian dealing with severe depression and contemplating suicide after a failed relationship. The most controversial episode in this lost season was titled The Real Quahog, and it was essentially a behind-the-scenes look at what the Griffin family's life would be like if they were real people instead of cartoon characters. It showed them dealing with real consequences for their actions, real trauma from their experiences, and real psychological damage from the constant chaos in their lives. Peter was portrayed as an alcoholic with severe brain damage from his countless accidents. Lois was shown struggling with depression and prescription drug abuse. Chris was in therapy for the emotional abuse he'd suffered, and Meg was revealed to be self-harming as a way to cope with her family's treatment of her. This episode was deemed too dark and realistic for television, even by Adult Swim standards. The entire lost season was shelved, and when Family Guy was revived in 2005, the show went in a completely different direction, embracing the absurdist comedy that defines the modern era of the show. But here's the really crazy part. Some of the storylines and jokes from these lost episodes have been recycled and incorporated into later seasons, but in much more sanitized and comedic ways. If you know what to look for, you can actually spot elements from the lost seasons scattered throughout episodes from seasons 4 through 10. Let's shift gears and talk about something that will completely change how you view the show's animation and production. Family Guy uses a technique called limited animation, which is common in television cartoons, but they've hidden several advanced animation techniques throughout the series that most viewers never notice. There are at least 12 episodes that feature what animation experts call rotoscoping, where live-action footage is traced over to create more realistic movement. This technique was used primarily in fight scenes and dance sequences, but it was also used in some of the show's most emotional moments to create more nuanced facial expressions and body language. The most impressive example of this is in the episode where Brian and Stewie are trapped in a bank vault. The entire conversation between the two characters was actually performed by live actors first, with Seth MacFarlane and another voice actor acting out the scene in a recording studio. This footage was then rotoscoped to create the animation, which is why that episode feels so much more intimate and realistic than typical Family Guy episodes. This technique has been used sparingly throughout the series, always in moments where the writers wanted to create genuine emotional connection with the audience. It's one of the reasons why certain episodes feel so much more impactful than others, even though most viewers can't pinpoint exactly why. Now let's dive into something that connects Family Guy to real-world events in ways that are both fascinating and slightly disturbing. The show has accidentally predicted or coincidentally referenced several major news events before they actually happened. This isn't just about the Boston Marathon bombing episode that was pulled from circulation. There are dozens of smaller predictions and coincidences that suggest either incredible luck or some kind of insider knowledge. In a 2001 episode, there's a throwaway joke about airport security being ineffective that aired just 2 months before September 11th. A 2003 episode featured a gag about a pandemic shutting down the world that's eerily similar to what happened with COVID-19 17 years later. There's even an episode from 2007 that jokes about social media destroying democracy, which feels remarkably prescient given everything that's happened with Facebook and Twitter in recent years. The most unsettling prediction came in a 2004 episode that featured a throwaway gag about a reality TV star becoming president and destroying American foreign policy. This was 5 years before Donald Trump even appeared on The Apprentice, and 13 years before he actually became president. These coincidences have led to conspiracy theories about the show's writers having inside information or being part of some larger cultural manipulation scheme. While that's obviously nonsense, it does highlight how satirical comedy often accidentally stumbles onto truth by exaggerating current trends to their logical extremes. Here's something that will blow your mind about the show's voice acting. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice multiple main characters. He actually performs entire conversations with himself, acting out complex emotional scenes between different characters in real time. This requires an incredible level of vocal and emotional control that most people don't appreciate. But here's the really impressive part. MacFarlane has admitted that he sometimes gets so deep into character during recording sessions that he actually forgets which voice he's supposed to be using. There are outtakes where you can hear him starting a line as Peter and finishing it as Brian, or beginning as Stewie and ending as Quagmire. These mistakes are usually caught in editing, but occasionally they make it into the final episode as intentional jokes or character moments. The most impressive vocal performance in the show's history is probably the episode where Stewie and Brian are trapped in the vault, which we mentioned earlier. MacFarlane performed both sides of that 20-minute conversation live, switching between characters fluidly while maintaining the emotional authenticity of both performances. It's a masterclass in voice acting that most people take for granted because they're focused on the jokes and story. Let's talk about something that connects Family Guy to the broader world of animation in ways that most people never realize. The show has actually influenced the development of animation technology in significant ways. The techniques developed for Family Guy's cutaway gags have been adopted by other animated shows, and some of the software innovations created specifically for Family Guy are now industry standard. The show was one of the first animated series to use digital ink and paint techniques exclusively, abandoning traditional cell animation years before other shows made the switch. This allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but it also created a distinctive visual style that influenced countless other animated series. More importantly, Family Guy pioneered several techniques for creating rapid scene transitions and visual gags that are now used throughout animated television. The quick cuts, the seamless transitions between reality and fantasy sequences, and the integration of different animation styles within single episodes all originated with Family Guy and have since become standard tools in animated comedy. Here's something that will surprise you about the show's writing process. Unlike most television shows, Family Guy doesn't use a traditional writer's room structure. Instead, the writers work in small teams of 2 or 3 people, developing individual segments and gags that are then assembled into full episodes by a separate editorial team. This explains why Family Guy episodes often feel like collections of loosely connected skits rather than coherent narratives. It's not a bug in the writing process, it's a feature. The show is designed to work like a comedy variety show, with each segment standing on its own while contributing to a larger comedic experience. The cutaway gags are written by a completely different team of writers who specialize in creating short-form comedy content. These writers often don't even know what episodes their gags will be used in. They just create libraries of content that the editorial team draws from when assembling episodes. This system allows for incredible creative flexibility, but it also means that the show's quality can vary wildly from episode to episode, depending on which combination of writers and editors are working on any given installment. Now let's explore something that connects Family Guy to other forms of media in unexpected ways. The show has actually influenced the development of internet meme culture more than most people realize. Many of the comedic techniques that are now standard in online comedy content originated with Family Guy's approach to humor. The random cutaway gag structure that defines Family Guy is essentially the same format used in modern social media content, where short, disconnected pieces of entertainment are strung together to create longer experiences. The show's influence can be seen in everything from TikTok videos to YouTube compilations to internet memes. More specifically, Family Guy popularized the idea of referential humor that doesn't require deep knowledge of the reference to be funny. The show's pop culture parodies work even if you don't know what's being parodied, which is now a fundamental principle of internet comedy. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy lore, let's talk about the most shocking revelation of all. There's evidence to suggest that the show is actually much more carefully planned and deliberately crafted than its chaotic surface suggests. Despite appearing random and improvisational, Family Guy follows complex narrative patterns and character development arcs that span multiple seasons. The show uses what narrative theorists call spiral storytelling, where characters appear to remain static but actually undergo subtle changes that accumulate over time. Peter may seem like the same character he was in Season 1, but if you watch carefully, you can see how his experiences have gradually shaped his worldview and behavior patterns. This sophisticated storytelling approach is disguised by the show's crude humor and seemingly random structure, but it's there for viewers who know how to look for it. It's one of the reasons why Family Guy has remained culturally relevant for over 2 decades, while many other animated comedies have faded into obscurity. The show's longevity isn't just due to its shock value or pop culture references. It's because underneath all the chaos and controversy, there's actually a carefully constructed narrative universe with consistent internal logic and genuine character development. So there you have it. Family Guy isn't just a random collection of offensive jokes and pop culture references. It's a complex, carefully crafted piece of entertainment that has influenced animation technology, comedy writing, internet culture, and narrative television in ways that most people never realize. These revelations should completely change how you watch the show going forward. Every episode contains layers of meaning, technical innovation, and cultural commentary that extend far beyond the surface-level humor. The Griffin family's adventures in Quahog are actually part of a much larger and more sophisticated entertainment universe than anyone could have imagined. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden depths of Family Guy, make sure you like and subscribe for more deep dives into the secret histories of your favorite shows. And let me know in the comments which piece of Family Guy lore surprised you the most. Until next time, keep looking for the hidden stories behind the stories you think you know. Have you ever wondered what happens when you dive deep into the chaotic world of Family Guy at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're exploring the surprisingly intricate lore behind one of television's most outrageous animated families. And trust me, there are secrets hiding in plain sight that will completely change how you see this show forever. Picture this. You're settling in for the night, your mind racing with the day's stress, and you need something familiar yet engaging enough to help you drift off. Family Guy might seem like simple comedy on the surface, but beneath those crude jokes and cutaway gags lies a surprisingly complex universe filled with recurring mysteries, hidden connections, and character developments that span over 2 decades of television history. Let's start our journey in the fictional town of Quahog, Rhode Island, where the Griffin family has been causing mayhem since 1999. But here's something most viewers never notice. Quahog isn't just a random setting. The name itself comes from the Quahog clam, native to Rhode Island waters, and creator Seth MacFarlane chose this location specifically because Rhode Island represents the perfect blend of New England quaintness and working-class authenticity that defines the show's core identity. The Griffin House at 31 Spooner Street has been the epicenter of countless adventures. But have you ever stopped to consider the layout and how it defies basic architectural logic? The house seemingly changes size depending on the episode's needs, with rooms appearing and disappearing like something out of a fever dream. This isn't sloppy animation. It's actually a subtle running gag that reflects the show's relationship with reality itself. Peter Griffin, the patriarch of this dysfunctional clan, represents more than just comic relief. His character serves as a commentary on American masculinity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Born in Francis Griffin's shadow, Peter's rebellious nature stems from years of religious oppression and emotional neglect. His mother, Mickey McFinnigan, reveals Peter's Irish heritage, explaining his love for drinking and fighting, but also his deep-seated need for acceptance and belonging. The complexity of Peter's psychology becomes apparent when you examine his relationship with his father-in-law, Carter Pewterschmidt. Despite Carter's obvious disdain for Peter, their dynamic reveals Peter's desperate need for patriarchal approval. This psychological wound drives many of Peter's most destructive behaviors, from his get-rich-quick schemes to his constant need to prove his worth through increasingly ridiculous stunts. Lois Griffin, voiced by the talented Alex Borstein, carries secrets that run deeper than most viewers realize. Born into the wealthy Pewterschmidt family, Lois chose to marry Peter against her family's wishes, but her motivations aren't purely romantic. Her character arc reveals a woman torn between her privileged upbringing and her desire for authenticity. The episodes where we glimpse her past as a rebellious teenager and young adult show someone who used Peter as an escape from the suffocating world of high society expectations. But here's where things get interesting. Lois possesses a dark side that emerges throughout the series. Her time as a kleptomaniac, her brief career as a boxer, and her moments of extreme violence suggest that beneath her suburban mother facade lies someone capable of extraordinary ruthlessness. This duality makes her one of the most psychologically complex characters in the entire series. Meg Griffin, often dismissed as the show's punching bag, actually represents one of television's most tragic figures when you examine her story closely. The eldest Griffin child endures constant abuse and neglect from her family, yet continues to seek their approval with heartbreaking persistence. Her character development over the years reveals someone who has internalized her family's treatment to the point where she believes she deserves their cruelty. The episodes that focus on Meg's inner life reveal depths of loneliness and desperation that border on the genuinely disturbing. Her brief moments of happiness, whether through fleeting romantic connections or temporary acceptance from her peers, become incredibly poignant when viewed against the backdrop of her usual suffering. Some fans theorize that Meg represents the collateral damage of dysfunctional family systems, showing how children can become scapegoats for their parents' unresolved issues. Chris Griffin, the middle child, embodies the show's approach to adolescent confusion and sexual awakening. His character walks the line between innocent and disturbing, reflecting the awkward reality of teenage development. Chris's artistic talents, particularly his drawing abilities, suggest hidden depths beneath his seemingly simple exterior. His relationship with his imaginary friend and his various romantic pursuits reveal someone struggling to understand his place in both his family and the wider world. The youngest Griffin, Stewie, presents perhaps the most fascinating character study in the entire series. Initially conceived as an evil genius baby bent on world domination and matricide, Stewie's character has evolved into something far more nuanced. His relationship with his sexuality, his friendship with Brian, and his gradual abandonment of his villainous schemes reflect a character coming to terms with his own identity in a world that doesn't understand him. Stewie's time travel adventures aren't just comedy devices, they represent his desire to escape or fix the circumstances of his existence. His future selves, whether successful or struggling, always seem dissatisfied with their lives, suggesting that Stewie's fundamental problem isn't his circumstances, but his inability to accept himself and his place in the world. Brian Griffin stands apart as the family's conscience, but his role as the moral center becomes increasingly problematic as the series progresses. His liberal politics, artistic pretensions, and romantic struggles make him a deeply flawed character who often embodies the worst aspects of intellectual arrogance. The show's treatment of Brian reflects its complicated relationship with its own political messaging and cultural commentary. Brian's death and resurrection storyline remains one of the most emotionally powerful arcs in the series, revealing just how central he had become to the show's emotional core. His relationship with Stewie provides some of the series' most genuine moments of connection and growth, offering a stark contrast to the chaos that defines most other character interactions. The extended cast of Quahog residents creates a rich tapestry of recurring characters that flesh out the show's universe. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's hypersexual neighbor, initially appears as simple comic relief, but deeper examination reveals a character struggling with serious psychological issues. His animosity toward Brian stems from more than just personality conflicts. It represents a clash between different approaches to masculinity and moral philosophy. Cleveland Brown's departure from the series to star in his own spin-off created a noticeable shift in the show's dynamic. His return brought back a stabilizing presence that had been missing, highlighting how important his character was to the group's chemistry. Cleveland's patient, reasonable nature often served as a counterpoint to Peter's impulsiveness and Quagmire's excess. Joe Swanson's character provides representation for disability in animation while avoiding most of the typical pitfalls. His determination to maintain his career as a police officer despite his paralysis, combined with his competitive nature and occasional outbursts of rage, creates a multifaceted character who refuses to be defined solely by his disability. The show's approach to continuity creates an interesting paradox. While individual episodes often ignore established character development and reset relationships to their baseline, certain elements carry forward throughout the series. Character deaths, major life changes, and relationship developments sometimes stick while others are completely forgotten by the next episode. This selective continuity reflects the show's unique position between traditional sitcom structure and the more serialized storytelling that has become common in modern television. The writers pick and choose which developments to maintain based on their comedic potential and character impact, rather than strict adherence to realistic progression. The show's relationship with pop culture goes beyond simple references and parodies. Family Guy has become a cultural touchstone itself, with its cutaway gag structure influencing countless other animated series. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and acknowledge its own existence as a television program creates a metatextual layer that rewards longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. The series' cancellation and revival story has become part of its own mythology. The fan campaign that brought the show back from cancellation in 2005 demonstrated the passionate loyalty of its audience and gave the series a second chance that most canceled shows never receive. This resurrection allowed the show to evolve and mature in ways that might not have been possible during its original run. The animation style itself has undergone subtle but significant changes over the years. Early episodes featured rougher, more expressive character designs that gradually evolved into the cleaner, more standardized look of later seasons. These changes reflect both technological improvements and shifts in the show's production values as it became increasingly successful. Voice acting remains one of the show's greatest strengths, with Seth MacFarlane's versatility allowing him to voice multiple main characters while maintaining distinct personalities for each. The supporting voice cast, including Alex Borstein, Seth Green, and Mila Kunis, brings consistency and chemistry that grounds even the most outrageous storylines in recognizable human emotions. The show's musical elements deserve special recognition for their sophistication and variety. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's impromptu songs, music serves as both comedic device and emotional outlet. The production values of these musical segments often rival those of dedicated musical programs, demonstrating the creative team's commitment to excellence across all aspects of the show. Family Guy's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. Countless memes, reaction GIFs, and viral videos have emerged from the show's vast catalog of episodes. The series' quotability and visual humor translate perfectly to social media platforms, ensuring its continued relevance with new generations of viewers who might discover it through digital clips rather than traditional television broadcasts. The show's controversial moments and boundary-pushing humor have generated significant debate about the limits of comedy and the responsibilities of creators. These controversies, while sometimes damaging to the show's reputation, have also kept it in the cultural conversation and demonstrated its power to provoke strong reactions from viewers. International versions and adaptations of Family Guy reveal how the show's humor translates across different cultures. While some jokes lose their impact in translation, the core family dynamics and character relationships remain universally recognizable, suggesting that the show taps into fundamental aspects of family dysfunction that transcend cultural boundaries. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy reflects its status as a cultural phenomenon. From action figures and clothing to video games and mobile apps, the Griffin family has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has provided financial stability that allows the creative team to take risks and experiment with different storytelling approaches. Behind-the-scenes stories from the show's production reveal the collaborative nature of its creative process. Writers, animators, and voice actors all contribute to the development of storylines and character moments, creating a more organic creative environment than the top-down approach used by many animated series. The show's relationship with censorship and broadcast standards has evolved over time, with later episodes featuring content that would have been impossible during the series' early years. This gradual relaxation of standards reflects broader changes in television content policies and audience expectations. Academic analysis of Family Guy has produced numerous scholarly papers examining its cultural impact, narrative structure, and social commentary. These serious examinations of what many dismiss as lowbrow entertainment reveal the complexity hidden beneath the show's irreverent surface. The series' longevity has allowed it to comment on changing social attitudes and cultural shifts over more than 2 decades. Episodes from different eras reflect the concerns and preoccupations of their respective time periods, creating an inadvertent chronicle of American culture's evolution. Future storylines and character developments remain unpredictable, as the show's willingness to subvert expectations and challenge viewer assumptions continues to drive its creative choices. The balance between maintaining familiar character dynamics and allowing for growth and change represents an ongoing challenge for the creative team. Fan theories about hidden meanings, secret connections, and future plot developments demonstrate the active engagement of the show's audience. These theories, while often reaching far beyond the creator's actual intentions, reveal the deep investment viewers have in the show's fictional universe and characters. The show's treatment of sensitive topics has evolved over time, reflecting both changing social standards and the creator's own growth and development. While early episodes sometimes relied on shock value and transgressive humor, Later seasons have shown more nuanced approaches to difficult subjects. As you drift off to sleep tonight, consider how Family Guy has woven itself into the fabric of popular culture while maintaining its essential identity as a story about one deeply flawed but ultimately loving family. The Griffin clan's adventures may be absurd and their behavior often inexcusable, but their struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging reflect universal human experiences that resonate with audiences around the world. Sweet dreams, and remember that no matter how chaotic your own family might seem, at least you're not dealing with a time-traveling baby, a talking dog with writer's block, and a father who once fought a giant chicken in an epic multi-episode battle that destroyed half of downtown Quahog.
Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and your brain is buzzing with the day's chaos. You need something familiar, something comforting, something that'll help you drift off into peaceful sleep. Well, tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog with some random Family Guy facts that'll ease you into dreamland. So grab your favorite pillow, get cozy, and let me tell you some fascinating tidbits about America's most dysfunctional animated family that might just surprise you. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Fox executives thought the ratings weren't strong enough to justify keeping it alive. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim. The DVD sales were so phenomenal that they broke records for animated series at the time. Fans were buying up seasons faster than Peter could down a beer at the Drunken Clam. This unprecedented demand from home video sales convinced Fox to bring the show back in 2005, making it one of the first series ever to be resurrected primarily due to DVD performance. The voice behind Peter Griffin, Seth MacFarlane, actually does most of his recording sessions incredibly quickly. While many voice actors take hours to perfect their performances, MacFarlane can knock out an entire episode's worth of dialogue in about 2 hours. That's pretty impressive when you consider he voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. His rapid recording style comes from his background in radio, where timing and efficiency were absolutely crucial. MacFarlane developed his distinctive character voices during his college years at the Rhode Island School of Design, where he actually created an early version of Family Guy as his senior thesis project. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you pondering as you fall asleep. Stewie's accent isn't actually British. Seth MacFarlane has explained that Stewie's voice is meant to be a sort of generic upper-class accent that could come from anywhere. It's a theatrical, affected way of speaking that's supposed to make Stewie sound sophisticated and pretentious, regardless of geographic origin. The inspiration came from old Hollywood actors and theater performers who adopted similar speech patterns to sound more refined. The character of Glenn Quagmire has one of the most disturbing backstories in animated television, though it's mostly revealed through throwaway gags and quick references. His middle name is apparently Quentin, and he's supposedly been a pilot since the 1960 seconds, which would make him significantly older than he appears. The show has hinted that he's been involved in various historical events, always in morally questionable ways. His famous catchphrase, "giggity," wasn't actually in the original character design. It evolved naturally during Seth MacFarlane's recording sessions and became so popular with the writers that they started incorporating it into more and more episodes. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. The Griffin family's house layout is incredibly consistent throughout the series. The writers and animators keep detailed floor plans to ensure that rooms connect properly from episode to episode. This level of continuity is actually quite rare in animated sitcoms, where houses often seem to have magical expanding and contracting rooms depending on what the plot needs. The Griffin house is based on an actual home in Cranston, Rhode Island, though it's been modified significantly for animation purposes. Brian's character has evolved dramatically since the show's early days. Originally, he was written as more of a straight man to Peter's antics, serving as the voice of reason in the household. However, as the series progressed, the writers began exploring Brian's flaws more deeply. His pretentiousness, his drinking problem, his romantic failures, and his writing aspirations all became major character traits. This evolution reflects Seth MacFarlane's own growth as a writer and his willingness to make his characters more complex and sometimes less likable. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture in ways that few other shows can claim. The Roadhouse cutaway gag became a popular meme format years before most people even knew what memes were. The "oh no" moments, the chicken fights, and countless other Family Guy references have become part of online vernacular. This digital footprint has helped keep the show relevant with younger audiences who might discover it through social media rather than traditional television viewing. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how cutaway gags are created. The writers have a separate room where they brainstorm completely random, unrelated jokes that can be inserted into episodes when needed. These gags are often written months before they're actually used, and they're stored in a database that writers can search through when they need to fill time or add comedy to a scene. This system allows for the show's signature non-sequitur humor, while maintaining a consistent production schedule. The character of Meg has been voiced by 2 different actors, though most viewers probably never noticed the change. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg during the first season, but Mila Kunis took over starting in season 2. The transition was so seamless that it barely registered with audiences. Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that she initially tried to match Lacey Chabert's interpretation of the character, but eventually developed her own approach. Interestingly, Kunis was also voicing Jackie Burkhardt on That 70 Seconds show at the same time, showcasing her range as a voice actor. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been fascinating to observe over the years. The show has pushed boundaries consistently, sometimes getting away with content that surprises even longtime viewers. However, there are also episodes that have been banned or heavily edited for various reasons. The censorship battles have actually become part of the show's identity, with Seth MacFarlane and the writers often incorporating discussions about censorship directly into episodes. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely irreverent. Unlike many animated series that treat celebrity appearances as special events, Family Guy often has famous people, voice characters, who are immediately killed off or humiliated in some way. This approach reflects the show's general irreverence towards celebrity culture and its willingness to bite the hand that feeds it. Many celebrities have appeared on the show specifically because they wanted to be made fun of, which says something interesting about the show's cultural position. Here's something that might surprise you. Family Guy has actually won several Emmy nominations and awards over the years. While it's often dismissed as lowbrow humor, the show has been recognized for its voice acting, animation, and music. Seth MacFarlane's musical numbers, in particular, have received critical acclaim. His background in musical theater shows through in episodes featuring elaborate song and dance sequences, which often rival those found in major animated films. The show's international versions are fascinating studies in cultural adaptation. Different countries have had to handle the show's content in various ways, sometimes changing jokes entirely to make them relevant to local audiences. In some cases, entire episodes have been restructured because certain references or situations don't translate across cultural boundaries. These international versions offer interesting insights into how humor travels, or doesn't travel, across different societies. Family Guy's merchandise empire is surprisingly extensive and eclectic. Beyond the typical t-shirts and action figures, there have been Family Guy board games, cookbooks, and even meditation guides. The show's merchandising success demonstrates how deeply it has penetrated popular culture. Fans don't just watch Family Guy, they incorporate it into various aspects of their lives through products that extend the show's universe into the real world. The writing process for Family Guy involves what the staff calls manatee balls, a reference to a South Park episode that made fun of Family Guy's writing style. The writers actually embraced this criticism and lean into the randomness that South Park was mocking. They've developed systems for generating increasingly absurd combinations of references, situations, and characters. This self-aware approach to their own writing style has become part of the show's meta-humor. Seth MacFarlane's other projects have often served as testing grounds for Family Guy concepts. The Orville, his science fiction series, actually uses some of the same character dynamics and humor styles that he developed for Family Guy, just in a different setting. Similarly, American Dad and The Cleveland Show served as laboratories where different aspects of the Family Guy formula could be explored and refined. The show's relationship with current events is complex and ever-evolving. Family Guy often references things that happened months before episodes air due to production schedules, but the writers have developed techniques for keeping the show feeling current. They've also mastered the art of making jokes that feel timeless, even when they're about very specific cultural moments. One aspect of Family Guy that often goes unnoticed is its sophisticated understanding of animation history. The show regularly pays homage to classic animation styles, from Disney to Warner Brothers to obscure experimental films. These references serve multiple purposes. They demonstrate the creator's deep knowledge of their medium. They provide visual variety, and they create inside jokes for animation enthusiasts. The show's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. Family Guy's success opened doors for more adult-oriented animated programming and influenced the humor styles of countless other shows. Its willingness to break the fourth wall, its pop culture reference density, and its approach to controversial topics have all been adopted and adapted by other animated series. As you drift off to sleep, consider this. Family Guy represents a unique moment in television history, where traditional broadcast standards, internet culture, and animation technology all converge to create something entirely new. The show emerged just as DVD sales were becoming important, just as internet memes were developing, and just as animation technology was becoming sophisticated enough to support rapid production schedules. The voice actors have developed such strong relationships with their characters that they often improvise during recording sessions. These improvisations frequently make it into the final episodes, adding spontaneity to what could otherwise be very controlled animation. The chemistry between voice actors, even when they're recording separately, comes through in the final product in ways that feel natural and unforced. Family Guy's legacy will likely be its demonstration that animated television could be both commercially successful and artistically ambitious while maintaining an irreverent, anti-establishment attitude. It proved that audiences were hungry for content that didn't talk down to them, that referenced the full spectrum of popular culture, and that wasn't afraid to offend or surprise. So as you close your eyes tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, someone is discovering Family Guy for the first time. Someone else is rewatching their favorite episode, and the creators are probably working on new ways to surprise, shock, and entertain audiences. In the grand tradition of animated comedy, Family Guy continues to push boundaries, challenge expectations, and remind us that sometimes the most comforting thing about entertainment is its complete unpredictability. Sweet dreams, and remember, tomorrow is another day in Quahog, where anything can happen, and usually does. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., when suddenly you realize something terrifying. The wholesome suburban mom from Family Guy might actually be one of television's most dangerous criminals. Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, shocking, and downright unbelievable world of random Family Guy facts that'll keep your mind spinning as you drift off to sleep. Before we jump into this wild ride, let me set the stage. Family Guy has been blessing us with its chaotic humor since 1999. And over those decades, the show has accumulated more strange trivia than a conspiracy theorist's bulletin board. These aren't your typical behind-the-scenes stories about voice actors or animation techniques. No, we're talking about facts so random and unexpected that they'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the Griffin family and their twisted little universe. Let's start with something that'll make you see Lois Griffin in a completely different light. Did you know that if we calculated all of Lois's criminal activities throughout the series, she'd be facing multiple life sentences? I'm not talking about minor infractions here. We're discussing murder, drug manufacturing, corruption, kidnapping, and assault charges that would make even the most hardened criminals nervous. The evolution of Lois as a character is absolutely fascinating when you think about it. In the early seasons, she was essentially a generic sitcom mom, playing the straight woman to Peter's antics. But somewhere along the way, the writers decided to transform her into something far more sinister. By the later seasons, Lois had become a full-blown criminal mastermind, hiding behind the facade of suburban motherhood. Take her casual confession to vehicular manslaughter, for instance. During a seemingly innocent family moment, Lois drops the bombshell that she once killed a jaywalker years ago. The way she mentions it so nonchalantly, like she's discussing the weather, suggests this might not even be her only victim. It makes you wonder what other dark secrets are lurking behind that perfectly styled red hair. But murder is just the tip of the iceberg. Lois has also run a methamphetamine operation that would make Walter White jealous. When the Griffin family moves to a farm and discovers an abandoned meth lab in their storm cellar, most normal people would call the police immediately. Not Lois. She sees a business opportunity and jumps in with both feet, becoming a drug queenpin alongside Peter. The fact that she rationalizes this decision by saying their family needs them to sell illegal drugs to the community shows just how twisted her moral compass has become. Speaking of twisted morals, let's talk about the time Lois went through what can only be described as the world's most inappropriate midlife crisis. After Peter makes some insensitive comments about her age at her birthday party, Lois transforms into someone you might find dancing on tables at a club at 3 in the morning. This leads to her attempting to seduce a teenage pop star, which crosses so many legal and ethical boundaries that it's hard to know where to begin. The shoplifting incident is another perfect example of how quickly Lois can spiral out of control. What starts as stealing a single ham from the grocery store escalates into a full-blown crime spree involving fine art and car parts. Her kleptomania becomes so severe that she eventually gets arrested, breaks out of jail, and turns her entire family into fugitives. All because she couldn't resist the thrill of taking something that didn't belong to her. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Lois's criminal behavior is how she treats her own children when things go wrong. When Stewie suffers a serious head injury, instead of rushing him to the hospital like any normal parent would, Lois chooses to cover it up. She and Peter create an elaborate scheme involving makeup and staged accidents to hide their negligence. The fact that she prioritizes avoiding responsibility over her child's well-being reveals a level of selfishness that's genuinely chilling. Now, let's shift gears and talk about some of the more bizarre production facts that most fans don't know. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, originally pitched Family Guy as a much darker, more satirical series. Many of the early concepts were considered too controversial, even for late-night television. Some of these rejected ideas eventually found their way into later episodes, but in modified form. The voice acting process for Family Guy is more complex than most people realize. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, often having full conversations with himself during recording sessions. The technical challenge of maintaining distinct personalities and vocal patterns for each character while switching back and forth rapidly is something that few voice actors could handle. MacFarlane has mentioned in interviews that he sometimes loses track of which character he's supposed to be voicing mid-sentence. The show's animation style, while appearing simple on the surface, actually requires an enormous amount of detail work. Each episode contains hundreds of subtle visual gags and background jokes that most viewers miss entirely. The animators deliberately hide references to other shows, movies, and pop culture phenomena in almost every frame. Some of these hidden jokes are so obscure that they're only discovered by fans years after the episodes originally aired. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writers handle the show's timeline. The characters never age, despite the show running for over 2 decades. This creates some fascinating continuity challenges. For example, pop culture references that were current when early episodes were written now seem dated, but the characters still react to them as if they're happening in real time. The writers have to constantly balance staying relevant with maintaining the show's internal consistency. The censorship battles that Family Guy has fought over the years could fill their own documentary series. Network executives have rejected countless jokes, storylines, and visual gags for being too offensive or controversial. What's fascinating is that some of the content that was deemed unacceptable 15 years ago would probably pass without comment today, while other material that aired without issue then would never make it to broadcast now. The shifting standards of what's considered appropriate for television have forced the writers to constantly adapt their approach. Let's talk about the show's international reception, which varies wildly from country to country. In some nations, entire episodes have been banned for content that American audiences barely notice. Certain characters have been completely removed from international versions, while other episodes have been so heavily edited that they're barely recognizable. The challenge of creating content that works across different cultural contexts while maintaining the show's irreverent spirit has led to some creative solutions and some spectacular failures. The merchandise empire surrounding Family Guy is absolutely massive, but some of the products that have been created are genuinely bizarre. There have been Family Guy energy drinks, pet accessories, and even home security systems. The strangest might be the Family Guy branded medical supplies, which seems like an odd choice given the show's generally unhealthy lifestyle choices and medical mishaps. The fact that someone thought a thermometer featuring Peter Griffin was a marketable idea says something about our society that I'm not sure I want to examine too closely. Speaking of merchandise, the show's impact on internet culture cannot be overstated. Family Guy clips and memes have become a fundamental part of online humor, often taken completely. out of context and used in ways the original creators never intended. Some jokes that weren't particularly funny in their original episodes have become comedy gold when isolated and shared online. The show has essentially become a meme generator, producing content that takes on a life of its own in the digital world. The guest star roster for Family Guy reads like a who's who of entertainment industry legends. What's remarkable is how many A-list celebrities have been willing to appear on a show that regularly mocks celebrity culture and Hollywood excess. Some guests have even allowed the show to create entire episodes built around making fun of their public personas. The fact that these stars are willing to be the butt of the joke shows either remarkable good humor or excellent agents who understand the value of staying relevant. But let's get back to the truly weird stuff. Did you know that the show has featured several episodes that were never supposed to air? These lost episodes contain content so strange or controversial that network executives decided they crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Some of these episodes have leaked online over the years, while others remain locked away in the Fox vault, possibly never to see the light of day. The existence of this hidden Family Guy content has spawned entire online communities dedicated to tracking down and sharing these forbidden episodes. The show's approach to historical events is particularly interesting. Family Guy has tackled everything from the Kennedy assassination to 9/11, often in ways that push the boundaries of good taste. What's fascinating is how the show uses humor to comment on serious subjects, while simultaneously acknowledging that some things probably shouldn't be joked about. This creates a strange tension where the show is both deeply irreverent and oddly respectful at the same time. The technical aspects of producing Family Guy have evolved dramatically over the show's run. Early episodes were animated using traditional cell animation techniques, while later seasons rely heavily on computer-generated imagery. This transition has allowed for more complex visual effects and smoother animation. But it's also changed the fundamental look and feel of the show in subtle ways that longtime fans notice immediately. One of the most bizarre aspects of Family Guy lore involves the show's relationship with its own cancellation. The series was actually canceled twice by Fox, only to be brought back due to popular demand and strong DVD sales. This cancellation and resurrection cycle has become part of the show's mythology, with episodes regularly making jokes about their own temporary death. Few television series have turned their own mortality into a running gag quite so effectively. The scientific accuracy, or complete lack thereof, in Family Guy episodes could provide material for an entire physics course on what not to do. The show regularly features characters surviving impacts that would kill normal humans, objects behaving in ways that violate basic laws of physics, and medical situations that would be impossible in reality. While this is obviously intentional comedy, the sheer volume of scientific impossibilities in each episode is actually quite impressive from a creative standpoint. As you're drifting off to sleep tonight, consider this final thought. Family Guy has been on the air for so long that there are now adults who have never lived in a world without the Griffin family. For an entire generation, the bizarre logic of Family Guy humor has been a constant background presence in their lives. The show has shaped comedy sensibilities, influenced internet culture, and created a shared cultural language that spans multiple generations. The random facts we've explored tonight barely scratch the surface of the Family Guy universe. Behind every episode lies a web of creative decisions, production challenges, and cultural commentary that reveals far more depth than the show's crude humor might suggest. Whether you love it or hate it, Family Guy has undeniably left an indelible mark on television history and popular culture. So as you close your eyes and let sleep take over, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next batch of Family Guy episodes, creating new random facts that will someday keep future generations awake at night, wondering how on earth such a bizarre and wonderful show ever came to exist. Sweet dreams, and may your subconscious be filled with the chaotic energy of the Griffin family and their endlessly entertaining dysfunction.